Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Great to see you all. And if you're new, welcome and thanks for joining us here as we discuss what is shaping up to be a very snowy week for a lot of folks. And I'm watching this pattern that could linger into Thanksgiving, and we could see some Thanksgiving snow for a lot of folks. Kind of looking on down the road here, and that obviously could impact some travel and all sorts of things. So we're going to break down all of that in today's video. Now, if you're a returning viewer, thanks for joining me. If you're new, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, where I am entering the second half of my junior year here. So definitely some exciting times for me, and I appreciate you joining me. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, now's a great time to do it. We've seen some incredible growth over the past couple of days. And you can join on board of this train that has left the station and is kind of metaphorically going up the tracks, if you will. So definitely do that. Hit the bell for the latest notifications. Like the video as well. And comment. Let me know where you're watching from. I do read all the comments, and I try to reply to some of them as well. So again, definitely do that. And it also helps me kind of plan where to forecast for in these videos. All right. Now, I will briefly mention also, if you have not already and you would like to order your 2025 GMWeather calendar here, please do so. It's a great way to support me and the channel and help out with my education, kind of buying some of those textbooks and things. So would love it if you can do that. And if not, that is absolutely fine as well, but just figured I would mention it for anyone who is interested. Alrighty, folks, so let's go ahead and get started here. And again, we got a lot to discuss. So currently with satellite imagery, we are seeing a pretty kind of potent storm system here up through much of the Midwest. This is bringing very active weather from portions of Wisconsin back into Minnesota and Iowa, where the center is. I say bringing active weather. It's actually not all that active around the low, but the real active weather is kind of on opposite sides here into the northern plains from North Dakota, South Dakota, into portions of Minnesota, and especially up into the prairie of Canada, rather. Both started with that K and C sound. We're also seeing active weather back down into the Gulf, though, here through Louisiana, into Mississippi, Alabama, and even the Florida Panhandle. We've had very heavy rainfall overnight. That will continue today with a severe weather threat, so we'll definitely touch on that as well. Now, as all of this is ongoing, our next big storm system is just off the screen here into the Pacific Northwest. This is that big shot of cold air that is already kind of working through the Rockies and is eventually going to combine with our current storm system to create quite the setup for some snow through portions of the Ohio Valley, the Appalachia chain, and even up into portions of the Northeast. And as I mentioned, that's not the end of it, folks. This pattern looks to hang on for a while, and maybe some folks that see snow now could see it again, and others that don't see it now could see it for the first time here coming on down the road. Now, taking a look at radar watches, warnings, and advisories out there. In fact, let me go ahead and just briefly turn off radar, and we'll just take a look at the watches, warnings, and advisories. Here in the east, again, still fire concerns up into the northeast through Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and I would even say surrounding areas, but specifically those three states kind of running into the worst of it here as we've had very dry, windy conditions. And talk about a dry fall. I've gotten plenty of comments here from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and surrounding areas telling me y'all need some rain. And the good news is we do have some on the way. Now, the kind of downside of that is it will be windy, it will be breezy, but hopefully that rain can help saturate these soils somewhat. And again, I think the pattern gets more active on down the road here. So hopefully we can finally quell those fire concerns as we go through the second half of November. Now, something new here today, we officially have winter storm watches up for the mountains of West Virginia and even the mountains of extreme western Maryland here, and even clipping just a little bit of Virginia here as well. Again, this is in preparation for those winter weather conditions on the way, and expect by tomorrow's video this map to really be filled in with those watches, warnings, and advisories. We're also seeing winter weather and active weather up into the plains, windy conditions here with these kind of beige and kind of yellow boxes, kind of mustard color, if you will, and then winter conditions with those pink and purple colors. So it's windy, it's snowing up here in this part of the country, so definitely starting to feel a lot more like January compared to maybe how it has felt, where we've had, again, a very warm fall. But we're finally beginning to flip that switch. Same story out west, folks. We've got all sorts of snow falling into the higher terrains of California, Oregon, and Washington State, where we even have blizzard warnings in effect for the mountains there. And we've got this big bomb cyclone off the coast here that I know a lot of West Coast meteorologists are talking a lot about. And yeah, it's an impressive storm, and that's why we've got all sorts of wind and rain happening out in that part of the country. Now, I will go ahead and turn radar back on here briefly so we can look at that. Again, talk about a beautiful looking storm system. And obviously, you hate to see impactful weather, but from a meteorological standpoint, this is about as pretty as it gets. Here's your low pressure, and then here's that big comma look to it. Again, you can kind of see how that shapes up here. And again, we're seeing rain from the Gulf Coast all the way well up into Canada, where it's actually falling as snow, and you can already see some of that falling as snow now. And this is kind of one of the fun parts about radar. Now, I think in modern days, a lot of people have gotten used to looking at the blue and the green and kind of deciphering what's what. But you can see just by looking at this what's rain and what's not. You'll notice right in here, there's kind of a sharp cutoff where it goes from these more sharp contours with the green to over here where it's a lot more wispy looking. And that's snow, that wispy look on radar. Up here in Canada, that's all snow, and then everything back this way is rain. So you don't necessarily need the color table to tell you what's falling. You can kind of tell just by looking at it there on radar. All right, that's kind of current conditions and what's happening. Let's go ahead and do our meteorology in minutes segment. And today we're going to talk about temperatures and pressure gradients and how they all relate. So if you're unaware, generally speaking, the way that we get strong winds or a tighter pressure gradient is through temperature differences. And that's happening today. Again, let's kind of go back and think, where did we say today we're seeing the highest wind? Right up here into the Dakotas and into Nebraska and kind of here through the northern plains. And what do you notice about this area? Well, this is right in the middle of a huge temperature contour, meaning here up into the Rockies, we've got very cold temperatures today, up into the single digits and teens. And then back here into Illinois, Indiana, we're getting up into the 60s, even 70s almost in places. And what's in between is everything right in here. And that's where our pressure gradient gets tighter, and that increases our force balances, and that increases the wind speeds at the surface. So you can see that even on the surface. Again, remember, right into here is where we have kind of the sharpest gradient of temperatures, again, where it's going from very warm to very cold. And if we go to our surface map and take a look at that, you can see right in here is also where these little isobars are the tightest, indicating that we have the strongest winds. So that's kind of your meteorology in minutes segment today. I know recently we've been doing a lot of upper level talk, so I figured I'd bring it back down to the surface a little bit and teach you some of that. So hopefully you found that useful and you can take that and remember it. All right. Let's talk about the storm system now, because again, it's going to be a doozy. It's already been a doozy for some folks. And here it is, now beginning that occlusion process or that phasing process with our big upper level pocket of cold air. And again, look at this, all this cold air up into the northern Rockies, back into the Pacific Northwest. This is plenty of cold air that is going to get kind of slingshot this way towards the east as this big storm system wraps around and really increases that advection across the plains and into the Ohio Valley and through the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. And even the Southeast is going to get in on the cooler temperatures, even if you folks outside of the mountains of maybe North Carolina and Tennessee aren't going to necessarily see snow. You're still going to see the colder temperatures from this pattern. And you'll notice as I move that ahead into time, here it comes. I'm going to refresh the page here real quick so it loads nicer. Here it comes, that big pocket of cold air breaking off, moving into the east, and then kind of just spinning around for a while through the weekend. This is Friday morning, very low height values over the eastern half of the country, indicating very cold air, especially just above our heads. And that kind of hangs around for a while, folks, and again, could bring plenty of snow. We're going to talk about that, then clears out. And then we get to Thanksgiving, and notice what happens again. This is Thanksgiving Day itself. It's a similar looking pattern, folks, so we're going to talk about that for sure. But before we do, let's go ahead and break down what's kind of happening right now with the storm system and what's happening in the near term, and then we'll talk about the rest of this storm, and we'll talk about that long range as well. So I do want to mention today we do have a marginal risk for severe weather through portions of the Gulf Coast from New Orleans back towards Gulfport, Mobile, Pensacola, even getting into Panama City and Destin, Florida, but even northward up into Selma, Alabama, Hattiesburg, Laurel, Mississippi there, and not far from Meridian. This does include the threat for an isolated tornado or two this afternoon. So do be aware of that for sure here through, again, this area of the country. But luckily, that's the only severe weather risk we have today. And as for tomorrow, no severe weather risk. We did have a little area into the Carolinas, but that has trended downward pretty significantly. And I think at the most you'll get some gusty winds, but you're probably going to get that either way. It might not necessarily be because of a storm system, or a singular storm, I should say. So again, good news there, severe weather has downtrended slightly for tomorrow. All right, timing this out a little bit here into the southeast. Again, a stormy day on tap. Heavy rainfall through Alabama into portions of the Florida Panhandle up into Georgia. This is this afternoon, about 2 o'clock Eastern. We've got rain falling through much of the southeast, upstate South Carolina, back through Georgia. The heaviest of it, though, down through South Alabama, southwestern Georgia, rather, and then into the western Panhandle of Florida. Picking up on that rainfall. And again, it could be enough to cause some flash flooding at times, and even an isolated tornado or two, not out of the question. Now, that continues here through today into overnight tonight. Again, showers kind of lingering. The worst of the severe weather potential tonight could maybe shift down the west coast of Florida, maybe Tampa, Fort Myers getting in on some pretty good lightning action overnight. Would not be surprised. Other than that, just some scattered showers, maybe a rumble of thunder or two through the mid-Atlantic and southeast overnight tonight. And that continues tomorrow morning, waking up to some showers in the Carolinas and Florida. And then slowly throughout the day, we'll see more of that. And this is when, if we do have a small severe weather threat tomorrow, it's probably going to be right into here, into eastern North Carolina. Right into that region, I would say, would be the most likely to see a strong storm or two. Could not rule out a brief tornado, but I think really strong straight line winds would be the biggest threat. Maybe even a little bit of hail or some graupel that could fall, as these will be kind of convective in nature. And then that clears on through, and that big front swings on through overnight Wednesday into Thursday. All right, that was the severe weather kind of rainy side. Let's talk about some of the snow now, and I'm sure this is why many of you are here, as trust me, like I said, I've been reading the comments, and I know we have plenty of snow lovers tuning in, including myself. Although I'm not really tuning in, I'm just here, but you get the point. Anyway, so we'll go through this afternoon, and you'll notice up into the northern plains, definitely still some rain through northern Minnesota. We've got this pocket of rain off through the Ohio Valley and into the Midwest and the Great Lakes region. But that changeover to snow really taking over this afternoon and evening through North Dakota. Heavy to moderate to heavy snow falling this evening through much of the state. And then even swinging down into portions of Minnesota. This is waking up tomorrow morning, or maybe just a little bit before you wake up, depending on when you do, if you do it with the roosters or not, I guess. But again, pretty snowy scene tomorrow morning. You're going to wake up to some snow on the ground, likely into North Dakota, even portions of eastern South Dakota and much of western Minnesota. By tomorrow afternoon, we've got snow showers from southern Minnesota through the Twin Cities back into northern Iowa, seeing some of that snow. Now, most of the accumulation will be into North Dakota, eastern South Dakota, and western Minnesota, but I do think we'll see flakes fly at times here through southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, and even portions of Wisconsin here, as you can see that. Now, still rain through Michigan, Ohio at this point. We have not changed over to snow. It's still going to be pretty rainy again today and tomorrow, kind of dreary, chilly conditions out there. But eventually, look at the snow moving eastbound. This is about the time the sun is setting tomorrow. We've got flakes flying potentially in Chicago, northern Illinois, and much of Wisconsin, seeing some of these kind of convective snow showers working on through. And this could be enough to drop a quick dusting to an inch of snow on the ground in places for sure, but more of a novelty event out of this one, I think, for you folks. And then you'll notice by the time we're getting overnight Wednesday into Thursday, here's our storm wrapping up. And we've still got this band of snow and even some lake effect snow kicking up here into western Michigan. We've got snow breaking out into the UP of Michigan. We've got, again, a pretty wintry scene setting up shop here for your overnight Wednesday. And by the time you're waking up Thursday, and I'm sure a lot of folks will be excited to see that. All right, snowfall totals through the next 48 hours. Again, the heaviest snow we're going to see is into the portions of North Dakota, northwestern Minnesota, and even northeastern South Dakota. The heaviest totals, though, right up here into north central North Dakota, where we could see half a foot to a foot of snow, not out of the question. 3 to 5 inches here, kind of into these, I imagine there's probably a little bit of some higher terrain up here into northwestern Minnesota. If you're from that area, let me know. But again, 3 to 5 inches into that region. And then even this pocket down into northeastern kind of South Dakota here could see some snowfall upwards of 3 to 5 inches in spots. So again, pretty wintry scene tomorrow morning. You're going to wake up to into portions of the northern plains. All right, we will talk about snow totals as well in those other places I mentioned. We'll do that in a moment with a different map, though. Talking about the Northeast, though, here, again, we are going to, let me back this up, kind of a spoiler alert there, sorry. This afternoon stays relatively nice. Now, we'll have some showers back out west into Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, back even into the foothills of Kentucky, and even down into the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee. But as we go through this afternoon and into the evening time, some of these showers break containment of the Appalachia chain, get east here into the Delmarva, seeing some showers overnight tonight, even a couple showers into the northeast. Probably remaining relatively dry into New England, though, through tomorrow morning. It's getting here into our Wednesday afternoon that the rain really picks up and our front swings on through. That front really creating a lot of lift here. This is getting into about 6 p.m. Wednesday, so a little after the sun is set here. We're gonna have again. It's gonna hit hard and heavy, folks. It's gonna be not warm, but it's gonna be relatively mild for the season. Then you're gonna get this rain to move through. Then the winds are gonna pick up. The temperature is gonna drop quickly, and you're gonna feel definitely that change in air mass as this bit of precipitation here works on through. Now, again, there are still some details to kind of iron out here for the snowfall forecast. We've been talking about the setup, and that hasn't really changed. But what I want you to notice, again, this big upper level low, this very strong jet streak, and what we have is a ton of lift right into this region, into that left exit region of the jet stream that's kind of overlapping here with some upper level diffluence. That's creating a lot of lift at the surface. Now, the question is, where into that region does our low pressure form? Does it form further down south into Ohio? Does it form up here towards Michigan and kind of into Montreal and Quebec? I guess more Montreal, not so much Quebec. That's going to be a big question here in the forecast. Now, again, if it forms right here, then the heaviest of the snow and just kind of on the south side here where it's overlapping that cold air will be through Michigan. If it forms closer down here to Lake Erie, then the heaviest of that snow will be down here towards southern Ohio, southern Indiana. And that's one of the things the models are still going to struggle with a little bit. Another thing they're going to struggle with is right into this time frame, they're hinting at another area of low pressure developing into the northeast with kind of a vortmax, as we call it, again, in this area of a lot of vorticity and diffluence in the upper levels. That's going to create low pressure. So where these little lows form and where these little pieces of energy rotate around this big upper level low, that's going to be the big question here for the forecast, and it's going to help us determine who's really going to get the worst of the snow. Now, I do think things have come better in alignment here, and again, we're now getting closer to mesoscale range, so I can show you the latest NAM for this time frame. Now, this is Wednesday afternoon. Again, like I talked, here's that front. And here is the storm developing. The NAM developing it right over Lake Erie. Again, starting as rain for basically everyone in the Midwest and the Northeast, but then the storm strengthens, that cold advection moves in behind it, and notice this transition. This is overnight Wednesday into Thursday. Rain changing to moderate snowfall here through portions of central Michigan. By the time we're really waking up, much of the state of Michigan getting in on heavy snow, probably blowing snow. This is a pretty strong low pressure system. And that continues throughout the day Thursday, and our low moves southward. And you'll notice we kind of get two areas of snow by Thursday afternoon. We've got one pocket of moderate to heavy snow down through Detroit, northern Ohio, another pocket into the mountains of the Northeast through the Adirondacks and into Vermont and New Hampshire. Otherwise, rain for everyone else. Again, it's one of those setups where we didn't have cold air in place. So this is not going to be everybody seeing rain or everybody seeing snow. This is going to be who has the best upper level support to change that rain over to snow. And generally, the heavier precipitation, the more likely it is that it's going to change to snow. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these areas. Now, that's Thursday afternoon. We get this into Thursday evening, and look at what happens here. You folks in Ohio, West Virginia, back into western PA, even portions of Indiana here. The NAM wants to drop a pretty big band of snow into this region, one that could bring plenty of impacts. And this is also the point we get that secondary low to form. So again, here's our first low. Here's our second low taking over, parked basically right over Boston. And this is slinging a ton of moisture back into some upper level cold air, and kind of due to that thermodynamic profile, that's changing over to snow for you folks again into the Northeast, even outside of the higher terrains. Look at this overnight Friday or overnight Thursday getting into Friday morning. We've got snow in Connecticut, western Massachusetts, Scranton, PA, snow falling into the mountains of West Virginia, even North Carolina. We've even got some snow streaming down from some lake effect into the bluegrass hills there of Kentucky, and even down into the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee. Now, this is the NAM, and I will tell you the NAM normally overdoes it a little bit and can get a little excited, but you look at this for Friday afternoon, and it's hard to not get excited as a snow lover into portions of the Northeast, into the Alps, and even into the Ohio Valley. All right, so that was the NAM. Let's kind of bring it back to reality a little bit and take a look at some global models. Then tomorrow we'll be able to look at even more mesoscale models and break it down. In fact, I'm considering going live tomorrow night to break all this down for you in a live format. I haven't done that since hurricane season, so stay tuned for that. If that's something I can work into my schedule, I'll let you know in tomorrow's video. But anyway, switching gears here to some of the global models, the GFS. Again, a similar story, but a little bit further north with our low pressure development, but you get the idea. This starts as rain for most people, but by Thursday morning, where we have our two low pressures, we're beginning to get that dynamical cooling in the atmosphere. The column is crashing, as we say, just meaning it's going from a warm column to a cold column. And because of that, we're breaking out with snow here into portions of Minnesota, Michigan rather, into Wisconsin, and then into the higher terrains of the Northeast on the GFS here. And that continues again into Thursday afternoon. Check out this snow breaking out. We've got multiple areas of it. And again, look at the difference in location of this low pressure. It's quite different from the NAM and the GFS, and it's going to be an interesting battle to see what model is right here. But by Thursday evening, we've got snow into portions of Indiana, Ohio, snowflakes falling into the higher terrains of Appalachia, even up into the Northeast, rain into Chicago, portions of Wisconsin, and then into the lower and coastal areas of the Northeast, seeing some rain. Again, like I mentioned, it's all due to the upper level dynamics. So you might be wondering, why are we seeing rain in northern Michigan and we're seeing snow all the way down in the mountains of North Carolina? It's all, comes back to that upper level cold air. And to kind of help you find out where it is, you see this blue line that's a big circle. That's our pocket of cold air. And you'll notice, more blue lines on the inside here. The closer you get to these blue lines on the inside, the more likely you are to be seeing snowfall. And then the precipitation rate also helps determine that as well. So again, heavier precipitation rate, more likely it's snow. GFS here, now this is when things get interesting, I think, and the models have been hinting at this a little bit more. Our northeast low has been trending a little bit stronger as we kind of see phasing from the original Great Lake low to our northeast low. Now what this could do is this could really pick up precipitation rates into the northeast, and we could see a quick burst of some heavy snow for somebody, and that doesn't necessarily have to be into some higher terrains. Now, on the GFS here, you see that heavy snow into the Catskills, but look at it even creeping down into northern New Jersey, back down towards Scranton. And I do think people outside of the mountains are going to see flakes fly. In fact, somebody could get a quick burst of heavy snow. This is Friday morning. Again, obviously snowing in the mountains of the Northeast. Also, that little kind of leftover Great Lake energy slams into the Appalachia chain. We've got snow falling from North Carolina all the way up through West Virginia, even into the Cumberland Plateau, through Kentucky, even seeing some of those flakes fly Friday morning on this model. And all that continues through the weekend. Again, heavy mountain snow. You see more low pressure develop along the Northeast. And really, just talk about a mess to forecast. This is going to be a tough one. And then that moves up. And that's a feisty low pressure on the GFS here. That's some strong wind into the Northeast by Friday afternoon. Then that works up into Canada and brings very heavy snow. And then we finally clear out a little bit by next week. But then our next storm on the horizon. So again, I know this can be kind of frustrating. I'm showing you a bunch of models or showing a bunch of different things, but one of the reasons I'm doing that is to just show you there's still uncertainty. I know this is right around the corner. We've been talking about it forever. But as I've said, the pattern is there. We're going to see snow. Somebody's going to get a lot of it. Who sees that, though, is just so tough to pinpoint, this far into the future. And you're saying, Gerald, it's like 2 or 3 days away. What do you mean this far into the future? These are just the limitations of meteorology, unfortunately. So here we go. European model, same story. Low pressure develops into the Great Lakes, similar to the GFS in location, brings that band of heavy snow through Chicago, northern Indiana, and then eventually swings it on down into the Alps at the same time. Strong low pressure developing into the Northeast, a little less on the cold air support on the European here, but this would still likely produce heavy mountain snow, just less likely that we would see snow outside of the mountains on the European here. And sure enough, that hangs around through the weekend, continues mountain snow, and brings some showers elsewhere. Now, again, the models sometimes don't do the best job of this, so you're seeing some of this that's falling to snow. If I take a sounding right here into the Catskills, for example, that's a sounding that very well could be snow. I mean, you see down here, there's not much of that column that is above freezing. We'll see. And generally, to the NAM's credit, which I showed you earlier, does pretty good with thermodynamic profiles. So it might be overdoing precipitation, but might be doing pretty good with who is snow and who is not snow. So that is something to watch for. And then same story on the European. This hangs around for a while, but clears out by next week, but just in time for another storm system to get going. All right, I showed you every model under the sun and talked forever. Let's talk about snowfall totals now. This is, again, now through this weekend into early next week. Snowfall totals from the blend of models. So we blend all the models together. What do we get as an output? Well, again, I think flakes will fly here into southern Minnesota, into northern Iowa, even back into the Chicago metro, and through much of Wisconsin here. That could lead to a dusting, isolated spots getting upwards of an inch, but overall more of a novelty event. Where the models really pick up the snowfall as into Indiana and Ohio here, where we've got 1 to 3 inches on the blend. I would also throw in potentially western Michigan in here, maybe even a band in central Michigan, depending on where that low pressure develops. But highest confidence is, again, for Indiana and Ohio to get the most of it in this region. And again, that could only be an inch or two. I don't think everyone in Indiana and Ohio is going to get snow, at least to significant proportions, but I think most people at least see the flakes fly. And again, I'm going to reiterate this. Somebody on this map does not have a lot of snow, but it's probably going to get more than is shown, and somebody on this map has higher levels of snow that might not quite get that much. It's just the nature of these forecasts, and it's going to change. But where we do have higher confidence in heavy snow is in the mountains of West Virginia. That's where we already have those winter storm watches. Blend of models is showing 1 foot to 2 feet of snow into these highest elevations. And folks, that could be blowing snow. So it's not out of the question. Maybe we do see blizzard conditions at times into the mountains of West Virginia. And you'll even notice, look at the snow creeping down into the mountains of Virginia, not far from Blacksburg, 1/2 foot on those highest peaks, down towards Boone, and even just north of Asheville here, 1 to 3 inches of snow for North Carolina mountains. That's going to help to boost up ski season down there as we continue those recovery efforts from Helene. And then seeing even some snow showing up into the Cumberland Plateau, up through Louisville and surrounding areas of eastern Kentucky here, maybe a dusting upwards of an inch or two, not out of the question. And then we get into the Northeast, and this is when things become very elevation dependent. Again, you'll notice the Catskills and Adirondacks, we've got places getting 1/2 foot to 1 foot of snow. But just outside of there, you'll probably see some flakes fly at some point, but it's really not going to accumulate too much. Same story here through western Massachusetts. I think we'll see some snow accumulate for sure. Same for the mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire. But you get outside of those higher terrains, and things become a lot more wet compared to cold. Again, I've said before, I'll say it again. I do think someone or other people into this region that I have circled will probably see some flakes fly at times. Maybe New York City, northern New Jersey, Boston, these places, it's very possible you see flakes fly. Will it accumulate too much? Not likely. But again, if we get that band of heavy snow to set up properly and the thermodynamic profile works in our favor, there's a chance somebody in here could get a quick burst of snow that accumulates for a minute on the grass and those elevated surfaces. So we'll see. And I'd love to see those pictures, by the way, when it happens. So if you would like to, send them to me through any of the links I have put below. I've got the email down there and all of my social media. So definitely consider doing that. All right, another thing we'll talk about here are temperatures, and it's going to get cold fast. Again, a warm day today, but notice this blue comes screaming in by Thursday and Friday. It's going to be one of those fronts that it goes from 0 to hero pretty quickly. At least if cold air is your hero, that is, and if 0 is a kind of scaling on a temperature. So maybe not the best expression to use there, but you get the point. The Friday afternoon, well below average temperatures through much of the east. And again, the southeast, it's not going to be snowing in Georgia or South Carolina or Florida or Alabama, but we're going to get below average temperatures, and that'll hang around through the weekend before likely warming back up again next week for a moment. But notice what's lingering behind that. Another big shot of cold air, potentially just in time for Thanksgiving. That'll be our next topic right after this. Let's round out kind of the final bit of this storm. That's taking a look at winds. Again, this is a strong storm, multiple areas of strong storms. We're going to have gusty winds this afternoon. Again, gusting into the plains and into the Midwest. By the time we get into Wednesday, that big pocket of wind swings on southward. Great Lakes, strong winds probably. This is Thursday evening through the Chicago area, gusting up near 40 at times. And then as we get that new low pressure to form into the northeast, heavy winds there, heavy winds into the Appalachia chain of Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, even down into North Carolina, especially those northwestern facing slopes. Going to see the strongest wind. Stays windy into the northeast through the weekend. And then again, another storm system on the horizon after that could bring the winds back up. But do not be surprised to see gusty conditions. And some of you that are seeing that heavy snow, it could be blowing at times for sure. All right, Thanksgiving right around the corner. It's going to be an interesting forecast for sure here. Latest GFS ensembles, folks. This is kind of a pattern that we need to watch. Now, a couple things I want you to know. We've got a ridge over Alaska. We've kind of got a little bit of a ridge up here over Greenland. And what this creates is kind of a void in between. So oftentimes what happens in this void is we get a shot of Arctic air or polar air, or some sort of cold shot of air that comes down out of Canada and into the United States. And that's kind of what the pattern is showing here for Thanksgiving. It's also showing that shot of cold air could maybe kind of linger around for a little bit. So this is Thanksgiving Day itself, folks. That's a lot of blue showing up on your map and a lot of curvature in that blue, which tells me that we could likely see storm formation combined with this cold air. So we'll need to watch it. But again, this is a big pocket of cold air over much of the country, and that could lead to winter weather. This is, about 10 days from now, so we've got a way to go, but our current storm that we're watching showed up about 10 days beforehand as well, at least the general idea of it. So we're going to watch this. We're going to talk about it. Chance of at least an inch of snow falling. This is right around Thanksgiving from the European ensembles. You'll notice a big increase in snowfall chances through the northern plains, the Midwest, into the Great Lakes region, even into the higher terrains of the Northeast. You're seeing those snowfall chances increase and hold on for a while there, even into the first couple of days of December. The GFS and its ensembles. Check this out. We've got pretty good snow chances quite far south here through the Central Plains into the Ohio Valley, even up into the Northeast. There's a pretty good band there of snowfall potential. Now, am I saying it's going to snow in Kentucky on Thanksgiving? That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it's a pattern we need to watch for a potential storm, and cold air could be around that somebody in the United States sees maybe a white Thanksgiving and potentially a strong enough storm that we see travel impacts over a big region. And this is what I mean by that. Latest GFS from this morning, brand new, hot off the press. This is Monday afternoon. So again, this is right after our big storm we just talked about. Notice what happens though. A big Arctic front kind of sets up shop, and we have a sharp boundary in here. So to the north, cold air; to the south, warmer air. What happens is that creates a strong baroclinic zone. That's an area of possible low pressure formation. And that's exactly what happens. We get low pressure to form along that zone and kind of ride that zone up through the country. Again, this is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We get into the Wednesday. We got snow breaking out pretty far south here, folks, on the latest GFS. And again, this is well out there, so don't take this verbatim. Don't run around telling everyone Oklahoma City's going to see snow for Thanksgiving. But it's a pattern we'll watch. Again, low pressure kind of running along these Arctic boundaries. And we get this far out into time, about 7 to 10 days. Check that out. Pretty good storm. This is literally Thanksgiving Day itself. A pretty good snowstorm into portions of the Northeast. So we'll see what happens. Again, we'll watch it. That's the GFS, but you'll notice cold air definitely in the forecast. European, it's a similar look, folks. We've got that cold air to the north. We've got the storm system riding that boundary just in time for Thanksgiving. And again, could bring some snow with it or some rain. And you'll notice well out here in the time, this is getting well out there, but we should see another big time storm showing up on the European model. So it's going to be an active month. I definitely think this is just the beginning of it, what we're going to see this week. And again, things continue to look pretty exciting for you snow lovers out there, including myself. All right, folks, I appreciate you hanging in there. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. Like the video, comment, let me know where you're watching from. All right, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.